You are listening to the cycling podcast at the Tour de France in association with Rapha, the fastest closing in the World Tour, the home of cycling with character. Ride and watch with Rapha in 2019 as a partner EF Education First and Canyon Sharam. Stage 5, today we're in Colmar.
Well, I've been waiting to do this for a while. Where are we, François Thomazeau?
Sorry, I had beer in my mouth, so I couldn't talk. We're actually in Kaisersberg. It was named, I think, 2 or 3 years ago, the most beautiful village in France, in a TV program about it. And we're sitting next to a place that's called chez Roger Hassenforder. Roger Hassenforder was a kind of a Tour de France legend because he was maybe in a sense the Peter Sagan of his time. He won 8 stages in the 1950s, held the yellow jersey in his first year as a pro and in his first Tour de France 1953. He was also renowned for his strong character and his life outside cycling. He was also dubbed by journalists the nightclub world champion. So he spent lots of time, got married, very more than once. His team director at a time in his career was Antonin Magne, who also won the Tour de France before the war, and
The monk.
Yeah. And Magne was a very serious man, unlike Roger Hassenforder. And one day they actually came to fists, and apparently Hassenforder used a bicycle pump to kind of beat up Antonin Magne. So he was a very strong character, still alive, and so much so that he actually handed the yellow jersey today to Julian Alaphilippe, who kept it during the stage. And well, just to finish on Roger Hassenforder, Julian Alaphilippe was asked, did you know who the man who gave you the yellow jersey was? And he said, I had no idea, but whatever, I respect it. I respect this man.
Well, there we go. We're seeing in his establishment tonight.
Yeah, we are, and I can certainly see why Kaisersberg would be thought of as, if not the prettiest, certainly one of the prettiest villages or towns, small towns in France. Chez Roger Hassenforder itself is a very Germanic-looking building, isn't it? And on the awnings, the awnings could do with a small clean, perhaps, I don't know, maybe, but they've got little bicycle logos and the initials RH. It's an attractive spot, that's for sure.
It's beautiful, yeah. I've been looking forward to coming here, and it's a lovely area, isn't it, the Vosges, and that's where we are, and looking ahead to the first summit finish tomorrow at La Planche des Belles Filles, something of a fixture in the Tour de France these days under Christian Prudhomme. We'll talk a bit more about that later, but can you give us a tale of the etape, please, Lionel?
Sorry, emulating François there with a mouthful of beer. I can indeed, yes, stage 5. Saint-Dié-des-Vosges to Colmar, 175.5 kilometres. The main break of the day had the King of the Mountains, Tim Wellens, in it, as well as Vuelta stage winner Simon Clark of EF Education First, Tom Schoens of Trek Segafredo, and Mads Wirtz of Katusha. Schoens dropped the rest of them on the Côte des Trois Épées, which was the penultimate climb with around 37 kilometres to go, and he was away on his own and looking pretty good, actually. He had stomach problems over the opening weekend. He told us in the first exciting instalment of Outside the Team Bus that
I think that was the first, was it? It was the second.
It was the second, you're right. Sorry, Richard. God, you know it better than I do.
And
but he
remember
said that it was out-of-date beetroot juice that was the culprit.
I know I'll forget this later on, so all of Lionel's Outside the Team Bus chats, including today's, but excluding the Wanty Group Gobert Day, all the other ones have something in common. If anybody can tell us what they have in common, they'll win a prize of some kind.
Well, you have to listen to see who today's victim of Outside the Team Bus was. Anyway, Schoens was caught on the final hill, the Côte de Saint-Chateau, with 22 kilometres to go. At the bottom of that hill, Edvald Bosenhagen of Dimension Data had a mechanical problem with his bike, and we saw a lot of him on the TV, didn't we, chasing back on, and he did get back in, although he didn't really figure in the finish. On the flat run-in, Rui Costa of UAE Team Emirates attacked with 7.5 kilometres to go and was looking really good, actually, caught with only a couple of K to go. And then we had a kind of a rouleur sprint fest. It wasn't a pure bunch sprint. We may debate that, whether it was, well, a lot of the purer sprinters were not at the front. And it was Peter Sagan who won ahead of Wout van Aert, Matteo Trentin, who probably got the best lead out of the day from his teammate, Mitchelton Scott teammate Darrell Impey. Sonny Colbrelli was fourth and Greg Van Avermaet was fifth. And that was Peter Sagan's 12th Tour de France stage win, drawing him level with Louis Trousselier, Gino Bartoli, Mario Cipollini, Miguel Indurain, Robbie McEwen and Eric Zabel. And he's the third highest active rider on the Tour, the list of Tour stage wins, after Mark Cavendish and Marcel Kittel, who, well, neither of whom are here. And Kittel, we could say, is not currently active. He's certainly resting. Anyway, that is stage 5 of the Tour. Julian Alaphilippe remains in the yellow jersey. Peter Sagan has extended his lead in the green jersey. Tim Wellens has done likewise in the polka dots. And Wout van Aert, who is sitting pretty in second place overall, is the best young rider. Tomorrow, as you say, Rich, La Planche des Belles Filles, and a really tough, proper mountain stage, really. There's no other way to put it. So we shall look forward to that.
The fastest closing in the World Tour, the home of cycling with character. Ride and watch with Rapha in 2019 as a partner EF Education First and Canyon Sharam.
Thank you very much indeed to our headline sponsors, Rapha. I mentioned a couple of nights ago, maybe last night, I can't remember, that the EF Gone Racing films will be coming out shortly on the Rapha website and on the Rapha channel on YouTube. Actually, the first one's been released already. Leading with Rigoberto Urán is, it's a portrait of Rigoberto Urán, the team leader at EF Education First. And he's not a guy that we know him, and he's been around for many years, but this is a real insight into who he actually is. So well worth a watch, and you will find it in the aforementioned places. There's more coming from EF Education First and EF Gone Racing over the course of the Tour de France. A good stage today, entertaining stage. It was good to see some strong riders up the road in that break. It put the pressure on a little bit behind for the teams trying to bring it back together for a sprint, most notably Sunweb, who a couple of stages now have taken on a big responsibility. The stage into Epernay as well, the Alaphilippe one. They did a lot of work to try and set it up for Michael Matthews, and did so again today. Really took on that burden of responsibility. There was a bit of beef at the finish, I believe, between Matthews and Darrell Impey, former teammates at Orica / Mitchelton Scott. I think Matthews felt that other teams, notably that team, might have helped in the chase and in keeping things together. But of course, Mitchelton Scott have other priorities here, so why would they have? Anyway, a bit disappointed, Michael Matthews, in the end.
Yeah, he was more than a bit disappointed. He said himself he was confused because nothing seems to work for him, and he looked really tired, disappointed, maybe because of the, not punch-up, but maybe with a little brawl with Darrell Impey, and also by the fact that it looked like a great lead out for him, the way it was kind of set up. Well, I talked to him on with a bunch of other journalists at his bus at the end of the stage, and he really looked confused, not knowing exactly what kind of tactics he should adopt, because he's not a bunch sprinter, a real one. He is a kind of puncher, but he didn't deliver so far. He was second in a stage, and he seemed like a little bit at a loss of what to do to get that stage win. And there was almost a hint at the end of the interview that it might not be entirely happy by the way the team had been working for him as well. So maybe we listen to what Michael Matthews had to say.
The day pretty much went exactly how we could have dreamed. We got rid of a lot of the sprinters and set me up good, but I'm not sure what happened in the final. I just wasn't in the right place at the right time. I'm not sure what these other guys are out here trying to do. I think most of them should be in a boxing ring rather than in a cycling race, but yeah, I guess that is sprinting. It's all part of it. Just wish I had a clear gap and some clear wind to actually show my horsepower. but unfortunately I didn't get to do it today. Just better positioning into that final few hundred meters. I think I was quite good, but everyone sort of done some crazy moves going into that final roundabout, which really pushed me back a lot of places, and then from then on it's just a washing machine. At the moment I'm getting a bit confused in the sprints for some reason. I don't know if I should have guys with me or do it myself. It's some days I have them with me and some days I don't, so I'm a little bit confused on what is the best for me at the moment, but just need to get my head in the right place and keep trying. But yeah, this is definitely not what I wanted today.
Pretty unhappy Michael Matthews there. It's tricky for riders like that, isn't it? How they ride. I mean, he can certainly win, but only if the course really suits him, and it depends also on what other riders are there. When Peter Sagan's there, he's always going to be a favourite. Now, we've been talking about Sagan as not being at his best so far this year. It's all relative because he's still been pretty consistent, and he's been consistent again here. But another stage win to add to his tally. And François, you spoke to his sports director at the finish.
Yeah, and Enrico Pojka. You could tell at the Bora and Grower burst that there was a kind of relief because, for them, it's like with the Koenig Quick Step. When you get a stage so early into the tour, it's it changes totally the outcome of the race for the team, because now it's kind of mission accomplished. I mean, Sagan has won a stage. We know he had a disappointing season by his standards. He said again, he repeated that he was sick in the first part of the season. So he seems to be back on shape. The green jersey is solidly on his back for the time being. So you could tell in the eyes of Enrico Pojka, he's both typically German. In the same time, he's a very nice guy, and it can kind of. And it's the role of a manager to kind of conceal his emotions. But every time you can tell in his eyes, how important is a result for him. And today he had this little light in his eyes, that meant that really now, now that's done. Next mission is probably another stage win. Next mission probably, of course, to win the green jersey again with Peter Sagan, and kind of a relief before La Planche des Belles Filles, because they have ambitions there as well with riders that could perform well in this stage.
I suppose this victory by Peter is a relief.
Yes, for sure. I think a lot of pressure is gone now, and we saw it in the first days how close it is. Every time, every stage, and he's in a very good shape, but to win is never easy. Always he gives his best, the team worked for him, and also today we invest a lot, and from that side is also not only for him, for the whole team, a big and a nice victory.
Did he have doubts, or did you have doubts?
No, not really.
So what does it mean now for the rest of the tour for Peter? The stage win is there. The next objective is what? The green jersey, another stage win?
Yeah, the green jersey is a big goal, but we saw it also last year how difficult it is, and one crash or bad day, and you can lose it. That's why we have to concentrate every day, and for sure we will try to win more stages, and hopefully it works.
Do you think it's a new start for Peter's season? Because the start of the season maybe was less glamorous than in the past. And
I mean, we know the reason that he was not in his best shape in the spring. He was sick, and that's always difficult. And from that side, he had a good preparation for the Tour de France. Now he is in a very good shape, and we have a lot of goals also in the next weeks and months. And World Championships again is a very nice course for him, and from that side we all hope that he can win more races this season.
Tomorrow is the beginning of the mountains, very tricky stages. It's a change of gear for you as well. It's a change also of interest. Who's your man to do well at La Planche des Belles Filles?
I think we have two riders what can do it well, and a third option also. From that side, also for tomorrow, we are very motivated and good prepared, and I hope, maybe too optimistic to say we win, but we can do a very good race.
François, on Michael Matthews and the amount of work that Sunweb did, certainly in the last sort of 50k of the race, I mean, they were all over it on those last two climbs, weren't they? And whilst they possibly have a point to say to other teams, you didn't really give us much of a hand. Well, they weren't obliged to do as much of the work as they took on. That was their own choice. But I do think back to 3 years ago when Matthews won a stage in Revel, and the whole narrative of that tour had been about how Orica Green Edge at the time couldn't quite decide who the pecking order between Simon Gerrans and Michael Matthews, and that was kind of vindication from Matthews, who had sort of been shackled a little bit as the kind of the junior man in the team, certainly not as senior, not as experienced, and not with the same Palmares at that time. And here Sunweb are without obviously Tom Dumoulin, so you can see why they would have done all of that work. But then for Matthews to only finish 7th, I mean, that's not the greatest result on, again, a day when you would think that Matthews would be up there. In Revel 3 years ago, he beat Sagan in that finish, so he clearly is capable of it on his day. They didn't really get the reward for the work that they put in, did they?
He was probably disappointed with himself, first of all, and then, of course, it's difficult when we talk to these guys just after the race, after the stage, when they have a huge effort put in and a huge disappointment in the same time. And, Matthews was obviously, you heard him, kind of, once again, confused, frustrated at a loss. He's a nice guy, he's a polite guy. He's not going to say it's somebody's fault, it's my fault. As he said himself, sometimes I wonder if I shouldn't do it on, by myself. Sometimes the team is there, sometimes it's not. And maybe the problem is just Michael Matthews. He's a great rider. Really, I saw him in Canada, last September. He won both legs of the Canadian Grand Prix. When he delivers, is exceptional. He's a really great rider, nearly of the level of Peter Sagan or Greg Van Avermaet, but he has the same characteristics, but it just... it's just a little something missing, and my impression is that he feels that, he's got a little something missing. Not being a punch sprint, not being as good as Sagan and Greg Van Avermaet in this kind of punchy rides, and he really needs everything to click into place on the day to deliver, and which is, I can understand his frustration, being so gifted, being so much sets, and not quite getting there.
What about Peter Sagan, though? I mean, 12 Tour stage wins. The funny thing with Sagan is that he's more of a story when he's not winning. When he wins, it's almost like, well, Sagan's won. He's supposed to win a stage or 2 or 3 of the Tour. He seems to be permanently in the green jersey. Has been for years now. He's had it. He had it as he was keeping it warm for a couple of days over the weekend, but now has opened up really quite a gap already. And he's not going to, assuming he stays healthy and stays in the race, he's not going to slow down anytime soon. It's kind of funny, isn't it, that he gets overlooked a little bit. And I wondered what you made of of his press conference afterwards. I don't know whether you heard any of that, because to me it sounded like it was surreal in places. He didn't really answer the questions he was asked. He said a number of times, "I don't know what you want me to say. I don't know what you want me to say," and he's there with his kind of branded motorcycle type glasses around his neck, and he looks, I hate to kind of say it, but in that scenario, maybe it's just that he's totally bored with that scenario, but he looks like a man who's kind of bored with what he has to go through as a result of winning a Tour de France stage.
I had the same impression as you had, and I told myself, okay, repeated he was sick since in the beginning of the season and everything. Well, we know, everybody knows actually that there were other issues in his life in the last month or year that probably affected his and maybe part of his not winning on top of being sick was a kind of lack of focus, goal, objective. He's done it all. He's been world champion. He's the green jersey won the major classics. Maybe there comes a time. It reminds me a little bit of Djokovic when he had this crisis in his career and shot back. And this press conference gave me the impression that he had actually, having not won a lot of races recently, he had kind of lost his appetite and his skills to entertain the press, like he was back in a major press conference for the first time in years, and he lost it.
Oh, not this again.
Well,
I remember.
you got to separate the winning from the things that you have to go through having won, and he's done that so many times.
Yeah.
That you know that's not the moment of victory, is it?
No,
Sitting in a caravan giving a press conference. I understand why he's bored, because it's
boring.
It's boring. He's been through it many. The only way he can sort of come out of that unscathed is by not saying anything interesting in a way.
Yeah, but 2 questions came from our friend Ciro, so they must have been fascinating and very interesting. But even then,
and one of them was about Elia Viviani.
Yes, true. Yeah. One thing about Bora Hansgrohe was today. I'll possibly be corrected on this, but today was the first day that I sort of noticed and didn't skip past the Bora Hansgrohe bus, because it was the first day I didn't hear thumping music coming out of it. It was quite a surreal, silent scene around their bus today. Maybe they switch the music off and they get a stage win.
Chute à l'arrière du peloton, cycling podcast team car at the back of the pack, please.
This episode of our Tour de France coverage is sponsored by Wattbike, and in particular the Wattbike Atom, which, Richard, we both have had a go on, and when the Wattbike was delivered to my house, I was pretty keen to have a go on it as soon as possible, and was relieved to find that it was as simple as plugging it in, pairing it with my phone, opening up Trainer Road and letting the bike talk to my phone, and away I went. And let's hear how easy it was for me to set up. So I've paired the Wattbike to Trainer Road on my phone, and it just worked like that. Nothing to it at all. It recognises the machine, and the machine recognises the app on the phone. I'm ready to go. So I'm going to do one of their FTP test sessions on it, which gives you, I think this one's got 2 12-minute intervals where you have to basically ride as hard as you can sustain for 12 minutes, and then at the end it will give you an FTP. So I've got my cycling shoes on. I'm going to get onto the Wattbike now, and let's give it a go.
Oh, Lionel, an FTP test. I got a knot in my stomach listening to that. How did it go?
The numbers weren't good, Rich, I won't lie, but that was nothing to do with the Wattbike Atom.
Yeah, you made it sound so easy.
Do you know what? I tried to record a little bit as soon as I'd finished, but it sounded awful. It sounded like I was running away from a crime scene, not doing some exercise. It certainly put me through my paces. And how did you find it when you paired?
I think we're going to hear little clips from my exploits on the Wattbike, and from other people as well around the Wattbike and their work with Wattbike. But I found it very easy to set up as well, and I used Wattbike's own programs as well as Trainer Road, actually. And it was all very good. I like the solidity of it. I like how you call your office your elite training centre. I refer to my office as a training lab, more of a lab, I think, when I had it set up in there. It does feel a very serious bit of kit, doesn't it?
Yeah, I switch between Trainer Road and Zwift, which are the 2 things that I use normally if I'm riding indoors. And with something like this, you want it to work first time and every time. And in my experience, that is exactly what happened. It would switch between the apps without a problem. I really enjoyed hooking it up and getting going. And if you'd like to buy a Wattbike Atom, Wattbike is offering a £100 Sigma Sports voucher to every customer who purchases a Wattbike Atom before July the 31st in the UK. If you want to find out more about the Wattbike, go to wattbike.com/TCP100. That's TCP and the number 100. And if you want to purchase a Wattbike Atom, use the code TCP100, that's TCP100, and you will get the £100 Sigma Sports vouchers.
Well, one of the stories that's been rumbling really all season, I remember when Daniel went off to the Katusha Alpecin training camp over the winter and came back with a few interviews from there. There was a real sense of uncertainty around the team, even from last year going into this year. There was some uncertainty about whether Alpecin would even continue this year. Alpecin are pulling out at the end of this year, 2019. And the team is looking for another sponsor. L'Equipe reported today that the riders have been told last night to look for other teams and that the team will close. That's since understand that actually the riders were told on Friday night that there is uncertainty, but nothing definitive. But certainly it's a team that needs an answer to a problem, which is a replacement sponsor for Alpecin, and a sort of sense of uncertainty around Katusha as well. Now, Katusha was launched, I remember announced during the 2008 Tour de France and launched with great fanfare in 2009. They signed up some big names, Filippo Pozzato, Robbie McEwen, and they had huge ambitions, a Russian cycling project they were known as. They've since become a more international team. They're based now and registered now in Switzerland, but still owned by Igor Makarov, a very wealthy Russian businessman who for a while seemed like a real power broker in the sport of cycling and seems to have drifted out a bit more. As I say, I think uncertainty is the word that we would use to describe the current plight of Katusha Alpecin and their future. They've put up a fairly good showing at this Tour de France so far. Mads Wirtz has been in a couple of breakaways, and Niels Pollitt, the runner-up in Paris-Roubaix, was up there today in 8th in the sprint at the finish. At the finish, I spoke to Mads Wirtz about his day in the breakaway today and also about the future of the team. I also spoke to Jose Azevedo, the general manager of the team, about these reports concerning the team's future. That was a high-quality group you found yourself in. How did that come about?
I attacked and then it was 3 strong guys who followed. Would have been better if it was a bigger group like the first group we went away, but yeah, Bora and Sunweb, they wanted something else, but in the end with these 3 guys that followed it, why not try?
When you saw the other guys that were there, did you think it's going to be a hard day and we've maybe got a chance?
Yeah, I thought we had a chance. I saw the day today like 50-50 for breakaway or sprint. So when these 3 guys came along and it was a nice group, then I thought maybe we have a chance, so of course we should go for it.
We heard this morning reports about the future of the team being uncertain, the riders being told they can look for other teams. What's your understanding?
I don't know any more than you guys, and there's a lot of rumors going on, but right now I'm focusing on the race, and I know the management, they are doing what they can to save the team.
It can't be a nice situation to be riding the Tour and have this uncertainty.
Yeah. I'm happy to be here and happy to show myself. This can help me for the future, even with or without the team. But I hope they will find a solution for the team. Yeah.
Jose, midway through today's stage, there was a story in the French newspaper L'Equipe that said the Katusha team is going to close at the end of the year. Is that true?
No, it's not true. For the moment, it's a lot of rumors, a lot of speculations. We have people who is working in the future of the team, and when we have real news, then we announce.
What's the position with the riders? Have they been told that the team's looking for a sponsor and they should keep waiting really until the end of the Tour?
No, we have riders with contract, and these riders have the contract with the team, so they have a contract and they need to wait. Because if we have team, we will respect the contract, and we have people without contract, riders who finish the contract, and these riders are free. It's normal when they finish a contract, they are free to decide the future. So we don't have a time limit. We are working in the future. We have some possibilities, so everything is open. We have 10 riders with the contract, so this is not honestly is not the priority. Which riders we're gonna side. First, we need to have a decision about the future, and then we start work.
Are Alpecin committed beyond this year, or is this their last year with the team?
No, they finished this year.
So you are looking for another sponsor, presumably?
Yeah, we have some possibilities, and we are working on these possibilities.
And is Mr. Makarov still as involved in the team as he has been in the past, or less so?
He's the owner of the team.
Is he around as much? Does he come to races as much?
Yeah, they don't come often, but he's involved with the team and he knows everything.
And is he committed as well to next year and beyond?
I don't want to say, I only want to say that when we have real news, we announce. For the moment, everything is around this speculation, and maybe tomorrow we have a different story. Today L'Equipe come with this new, maybe tomorrow comes a different. So, yeah, when we have something real concrete, then we inform.
Well, Katusha are not the first team to be in this kind of position during the Tour de France, are they? Ironically, when Daniel went to see Katusha in Mallorca back in January, it was around it was exactly the same time that the news broke that Team Sky would be getting out at the end of the year. And of course, when we initially reacted to that whole story, we were fairly sceptical about the idea of Dave Brailsford and co attracting a sponsor that would match, let alone beat, the budget of Team Sky, but he managed to do so with Ineos. And one of the things Brailsford has said over the months is that Ineos were by no means the only suitor. He claimed that there was a lot of interest, and that could be a bit of bravado maybe, but certainly his experience of trying to attract a sponsor is at odds with some other teams. And we will wait and see what happens with Katusha, but there's the whole Canyon question, isn't there, who are so invested in Mathieu van der Poel, the cyclocross world champion of just about everything, Tiddlywinks I think also, and clearly he has a future on the road. And there was some rumbles a month or so ago that perhaps there might be movement from Van der Poel's team in the Katusha direction, but actually that appears not to be the case. It may well be that the World Tour licence, if Katusha doesn't manage to come up with alternative sponsorship, the World Tour licence might be up for sale, and then, well, there could be a way in for several people to get into the World Tour.
Yeah, a little interesting addendum to Azevedo interview there. After I'd finished recording, he said that the team has gone through the World Tour application processes as normal. As he said, they've got 10 riders under contract for next year, so a lot of riders not under contract for next year, which is significant. I thought his response to the question about Makarov was also significant, that he wouldn't comment on his future involvement and how involved he'll be with the team next year and into the future. So yeah, a lot of it's really doesn't seem very clear at all what's going to happen with that team. Can I do a little corrections corner from last night? I said that Max Richese was going to Cofidis with Elia Viviani. He is going to UAE to hook up with Fernando Gaviria. And it's Fabio Sabatini from De Koning Quickstep who will move with Viviani to Cofidis. Apparently Viviani doesn't really want to move, but the offer he's been made by Cofidis is irresistible. You talked a little bit about the De Koning Quickstep wage structure, Lionel.
Don't want to be unkind, but who wants to go to Cofidis, really? I mean,
if the money was right, he's not apparently earned very much the last couple of years. It's all relative, of course, but he's won a lot of races, Viviani, and the next 2 years are probably the 2 years when he can earn the most money. And so he's also perhaps got Olympic ambitions, and Cofidis may support that, where the Koenig Quickstep might not. So that might be another reason for him to go. Are we going to hear outside the team bus?
We certainly are. Why don't we do that now?
Outside the team bus with
Ben King, and I ride for Team Dimension Data for Quebeca.
Now, Ben, you're here hunting for stages, but what are the mechanics of stage hunting? I guess that job starts today a little bit.
Yeah, it's a tactical thing. Obviously, we were looking over Giacomo in the first couple of sprint stages. Today, that if it comes to the final with the peloton, it's a good stage for Edvald. Otherwise, we're going to try to be present in the breakaways as well. So, you always have to be aware of what's going on with the other teams, what's the composition of the breakaway, and who wants to control. So you have to start to gather that information even on the start line in a neutral zone, and then try to make the best decisions out on the road.
How easy is it to look at the tour as a whole and kind of identify days that might work for you, whilst also trying to go with the mantra of taking it day by day?
For that, I think it depends on who is in the leader's jersey and what are their ambitions to keep the jersey an extra day or control, or who, I'm already down on the overall, so I have if I go in the breakaway, then Quickstep doesn't need to chase me down. But then if Ben Avermaet is in the breakaway today, then they may want to keep the jersey another day, and then in that case they would chase. So it's about making those kinds of decisions out there.
Are there any riders you look at from other teams you think if he moves that would be a good wheel to go with?
Yeah, I think for sure, like De Gent and Wellens will try today, guys like that. I know Søren Kragh Andersen, he lost time yesterday. There are a few guys who you could see lost time intentionally to give themselves a chance to get up the road later on. So
How much confidence have those 2 wins at the Vuelta last year given you, because they were both such impressive wins where you fought to get in the break and then had the strength to finish them off?
Yeah, in cycling they always say that you're only as good as your last race, which is, it's kind of true, but at the same time, having achieved victories like that, I know it's possible. I know that I'm capable of it. I know that I have that potential. So even just trusting myself in situations like that, if I have an opportunity like that, then I know I'm capable of it. And I've put in the work, and I'm still the same rider as I was then. So yeah, I know it's possible. This is the Tour, so nothing is free. But
is the level that bit higher? Do you notice it's a few years since you were last here? Is it kind of all coming back to you now?
It's all the same riders. It's all the same riders that we raced with all year, and even in the Ardennes Classics, the stress is there, and physically those races are just as hard. But there's so much more outside of the Tour, just the attention it gets and the pressure from sponsors, and just everyone's invested so much in this that that can affect you as well, I think, and that also affects each rider that feels that pressure and fights that extra bit harder. So in that sense, yeah, I guess you can feel the kind of a different atmosphere, more energy.
And when you do get into a break, how much are you calculating the whole time, the energy you're using, trying to save, but also not trying to kind of not pull your weight, I guess?
Yeah, you're always calculating. And for the breakaway to have a chance to make it to the line, then you do have to pull your weight. So it's about, they say do as much work as the weakest guy in the group, or whoever's, don't work more than anyone else basically, but maybe one guy's having a bad day and you have to determine whether he's bluffing or if he's just trying to save energy, and then that kind of situation you have to make that call, and if he's really just having a bad day, then you might have to pull a little bit more than him, but you have to calculate, you're always calculating your own potential, your own strength, what you have left in the tank compared to everyone else, so you don't want to do any hero moves early on, but you have to pull your weight to keep the momentum of the group moving.
And lastly, I don't want to give your tactics away, but have you earmarked a stage in the road book, or a couple of stages in the road book that are for you?
Not particularly. There are a lot of days that I think will suit the breakaway though, so those are the days that we're going to have our eyes on.
The cycling podcast at the 2019 Tour de France is supported by Science in Sport. Science in Sport, fueled by science.
Thanks very much to Science and Sport for supporting the cycling podcast. You can get 25% off all your Science and Sport products with the code. François, have you been paying attention? What's the code? What's the discount code for Science and Sport?
I have absolutely no idea.
Just zones out, eh? ScienceandSport.com, and the code is...
I did it as a robot last night. I don't know any other voices.
Just do the robot again. It was good.
SISCP25.
That's a bit like the Team Sky robot that you were talking about a couple of years ago.
Oh.
Listen, before we go on, we're offering a folding bike to one lucky listener to the cycling podcast. The beautiful Austin Cycles Atto bike, which I'm riding around on. I haven't been riding around it much the last couple of days because the stages have been quite easy from a logistical point of view, but I do anticipate that I'm going to be using it a lot over the next few days, and I will report back and post some pictures and so on. It's a really beautiful carbon fibre folding bike worth £2,775. So a really lovely bike and well worth winning. To win it, sign up to our newsletter at thecyclingpodcast.com, and when you get the newsletter, you can click through to a link, and we want you to leave the reason why you should win it. Now, here are a few submissions. Tom Martin: there's no one in the UK keener to heed the views of Birnie, Moore and Freeb. Don't know if that's supposed to rhyme there, Tom. After hearing their discourse, I reiterate to chums with force the views the gents opine and pass them off as mine. Decent. Steve Simpson, he's made it's a play on Atto. Silly, deserve to ride, fold and love this bike with weekly wash and lube care following Richard's Tour de France abuse, chasing down Daniel and Lionel in their early morning spins. Kirsty O'Malley says, I would love a carbon folding bike. It must be better than having to hike. So please choose me to win the Atto. I'd be so happy I'd eat my hatto. A laughter. That's the winning entry so far, Kirsty. So try and beat that. Obviously, little rhymes are the way to go, little puns. It's an 11-speed Austin Cycles AC Atto, to give it its full title. Sign up at the newsletter. Kilometre Zero, next episode comes out tomorrow, and it's on La Planche des Belles Filles. We're going to talk about that in a moment. But first, we have a mystery voice.
I think that Pinot, he was very strong at the Tour de l'Ain. Tour de l'Ain was a long time ago, 1.5 months ago. And the finish of the Tour de France, the last week, will be 2 months later. This is a little risk, but for the other part, he's very skinny. You know that this is his opportunity. The team don't put the mark here for him. Think that he have a lot of different points that maybe can be his Tour de France, but for sure it's not easy.
Who was that, François?
Well, if it's not a mystery voice anymore if I say who it was, but I guess most of you, dear listeners, as Chiro would say, have recognized this man who usually, when he used to ride, he wouldn't speak English. Now that he's a team manager, a PR man, and looking as fit as ever, he does speak pretty good English actually. And the man, of course, was the man who won the Tour de France 10 years ago. His name is Alberto Contador.
Yeah, indeed. So he was at the start. He was on a motorbike today for Eurosport, wasn't he?
Absolutely. Yeah. And he hung around the buses, talking to everybody, kind of I wouldn't say begging for selfies, but very willing to take part in all the circus. He gave an impression he misses it a little bit, and talking to almost everybody, from the press. And yeah, well, it was nice to see him around. He's kind of been missed a little bit, I think.
Contador, obviously in 2014, on the Tour's second visit to La Planche des Belles Filles, a stage very similar to tomorrow's in that it was about far more than just La Planche des Belles Filles. It was a tough day in the Vosges mountains, and it was pretty bad weather that day, I think, and Contador had a terrible crash, which forced him out of the Tour. It was a very dramatic day on the Tour, and it probably removed from the Tour the man who would have been most likely to challenge Vincenzo Nibali. But so it was a very significant day for the Tour, for that Tour, and for Alberto Contador as well. And the stage that we're looking at tomorrow is kind of similar, isn't it, Lionel? I heard Dan Martin tonight say that he thought it might even be the hardest stage of the entire Tour.
Well, when you look at the profile and the climbs, then there's possibly a case for that. Not necessarily in the any of the climbs that have the severity of repeated climbs in the Alps and Pyrenees, but it's a real sort of dog's tooth profile, isn't it? There's a first category climb, Le Markstein at the start, and then there's the Grand Ballon, which had a beautiful name, but that's a slightly deceptive one because it's only a third category. It's only a kilometre and a half or thereabouts. And then there's a second category climb, then the Ballon d'Alsace, which was really the first mountain the Tour ever went over in 1905. So there's some romance there, and that's difficult. And then another third category and a second category before La Planche des Belles Filles, and of course the thing that everybody is talking about and doesn't really know a great deal about is this additional stretch of gravel at the finish and the gradient, and it's a pretty different proposition to certainly the last time when they only had a third category climb on the way in 2017. It's a proper climbing day, and it's not as controllable as the Alps and Pyrenees, where you do see a team just on the front, and the valley roads are nice and straight, and everyone knows, all right, we're descending, then we're going along the flat, now we're climbing again. It's a bit more gnarly, isn't it, in this area of France? It's trickier. Weather will be fine, I think, according to the forecast, but a tough day, and we will find out certainly who the best half dozen climbers are tomorrow afternoon.
As you say, a lot of uncertainty as well. It's a word I'm using a lot tonight about the finish. Not many people seem to have been to inspect it. We spoke to Christian Prudhomme this morning, François, for tomorrow's episode of Kilometre Zero, and he described the last sort of 900 metres as gravelly. We think it's been treated a little bit hard packed, so it's not going to be just a loose kind of gravel road. And it's very, very steep in places, so there's some work being done to make sure that riders' tyres grip. but it's going to be difficult. And among some DSs and riders, there's a bit of maybe anger is too strong, but a question of why it's been felt necessary to add this gear. Van Bont, who I spoke to the other day and who we'll hear from in this episode of Kilometre Zero tomorrow, really confused and puzzled about why the organisers felt the need to add this extra bit. But as Prudhomme told us, they'd always had that in mind from their very first visit to La Planche des Belles Filles. He also told us that in the future, with this extra bit and the extra difficulty, La Planche des Belles Filles could feature later in the race, perhaps in week 2 or 3. Which is fascinating when you think about, where the Tour might start and how it, navigates its way around France when it's so kind of restricted in a way by having to go to the Alps and the Pyrenees in weeks 2 and 3.
Yeah. I mean, with the start in Nice, you're pretty close to the Alps.
Nice.
You are close to the Alps. So when every time now it opens possibilities to start from the south, even the southwest, which was a little bit tricky in the past, or from Spain even, and go through the Pyrenees and go back to Paris and have a last week of the Tour with maybe the Vosges, maybe not the last week, but So yeah, of course.
He also said there were lots of other climbs, didn't he, in this area that they're looking at.
And we know he loves les Vosges, so yeah, obviously there's thinking and planning behind that.
Let's hear from Matt White, the director at Mitchelton Scott. I mean, they're always pretty meticulous in their planning. They're here with Adam Yates to try and win the Tour. We'll hear first of all just what he said about Adam Yates last year, because he had problems last year. We're not quite sure what they were. We think it was dehydration. Quite cryptic response from Matt White here before we go on to talk about La Planche des Belles Filles. Last year there were questions or rumours about him not coping so well with the heat. I don't know if you ever got to the bottom of that, whether it was a heat issue or a dehydration issue on one day. What happened to him last year?
Yeah, I'm not going to say. We've sorted it out internally, and we're confident for this year's Tour de France that we've resolved the issue.
Sounds like a secret.
No, it's not for public knowledge. It's for us. So people make mistakes. We as teams make mistakes, but the people who learn from them are the ones who are successful. And the best place is to learn from a mistake. And last year we had some issues there, but we're confident going forward that everything's been put in place for this year's Tour, regardless of the temperature.
And Thursday's stage to La Planche des Belles Filles, I understand that's a climb that Adam knows really well, having lived and raced in the area. Is that a climb you know well as well?
Been up it a few times, but the only thing that we don't know is the last 900 metres, which has been a fire trail until not that long ago. And it's incredibly steep, and I think the last 900 metres to a kilometre, I think it will change the last climb, because before, I think it won't be as hard from the bottom because the effort is going to be maybe 3 minutes longer. So it's a very, very tough day. Other days we have used this final climb, the days haven't been as tough. So the day in general is tougher. You add another 900 metres at slopes of 22%, 24% to the finish line. I think we're going to see some major splits between the GC guys, and it's going to be an exciting day.
Is it a climb that suits Adam? I said he knows it. Is it one that he likes as well?
Yeah, he does. Adam is not a guy who has had a lot of experience up in that Ardennes style of racing, but that's the style that we want to mould him towards as well. He has finished 6th or 7th in the Liège-Bastogne-Liège, crashed this year in Flèche, but they're the races that suit him, and that's a very similar final, punchy, explosive finals, and I think it's a final that suits his characteristics.
It's obviously a really open race this year. I mean, is that how you see it, that there are a group of 5, 6, 7 riders who could genuinely win this race?
I do, but I still think the favourites are definitely Ineos. I think Geraint Thomas and Bernal, for me, are favourite number 1 and number 2, and then I put another 4 or 5 guys in a bracket there, all with the ability to fight out for the podium.
So that was Matt White, not revealing too much about what they've found with Adam Yates and the problems he had last year, but confident that it won't be a problem this year. And looking ahead, well, I think we're all looking forward to a really interesting and exciting stage tomorrow.
We certainly are, Rich, but in terms of Tour de France route planning, I've made a real rookie error in my fueling strategy. don't want to reveal too much about this, but last night in Nancy we had a very nice meal in the restaurant, the Brasserie Excelsior, which François booked for us. It seemed like half the Tour de France was in there at one point. The whole of L'Equipe were in there, and other faces from that I see outside the team buses. No riders, of course. They were all having their specially prepared meals back at their hotels, all carefully weighed out and designed by nutritionists and prepared by their chefs.
The waiters were coming out the swinging doors, weren't they? Just barely able to hold up trays, groaning with food. It was
as we were waiting for Lionel's quiche Lorraine to come in time, but apparently he was not warm enough, the waiter told us, so we had to wait a little bit. And you had sauerkraut.
I did. Well, that was the error I was referring to, because the sauerkraut with all of the pork on the top, the Frankfurter sausage and the knuckle of ham and the slices of other bits of pork it's not quite from Nancy, is it? It's much more down here in the Alsace. And looking at the very attractive looking menu at chez Roger Hassenforder, I mean, ordinarily I'd be relishing a plate of sauerkraut this evening, but back-to-back sauerkrauts, that's like climbing Alpe d'Huez twice in the same stage.
Or cassoulet twice as well. But we drank Pinot Noir last night, I must say, and which brings us back to La Planche des Belles Filles, because Pinot, I talked to Yvon Madiot, one of his team directors, this morning, and he didn't hide, the ambitions of Thibaut Pinot. He said he will be in his garden. He knows every single centimeter of all the climbs involved, and it's going to be a very special day for him. And they didn't try to say, oh no, it'll be a day like another, and we'll see what happens. The objective of Thibaut Pinot, of course, is to feature as well as possible in the Tour, but tomorrow he has kind of made it his duty to shine on his roads and to actually go for victory.
I think he'll win. If he doesn't win, I think Guillaume Martin will win. There we go.
I don't indulge in this kind of speculation really, but I'm really fascinated to see how Julian Alaphilippe gets on, because we know what kind of climber he can be when he's able to get up the road. I mean, he's obviously very good. He can cope with really steep stuff. We've seen him win on the Mur de Huy at Flèche Wallonne, so 24% won't be worrying him perhaps as much as some of the others. It's the steady bit in the middle that's the problem, isn't it, for him? And the relatively inexperienced at riding in that kind of defensive way, when that group goes from 50 riders to 40 to 30, and then it's they start popping off the back. Whether he sits at the back and goes round people, or it's going to be really interesting to watch him tomorrow.
I think Pinot will win, or Guillaume Martin, or Alaphilippe. I mean, I really do. I think it could be this could be a yellow jersey defence that goes a lot further than people imagine. It could be like a Tommy Vogler spell in yellow. I think that he's one of these riders that rides on such passion that he will fight to the end to defend that yellow jersey, I think, tomorrow. And while I don't think he'll win the Tour, I think he could go quite a long way in yellow. Well, the incentive is there, because if he does get through tomorrow, he really could be in the yellow jersey to sort of back end of next week. I mean, that's the prize that's on offer. Just before we go, another mention for our event at Harrogate during the World Championships on Friday night. That's going to be great fun. François will be there, Daniel Friebe will be there, I'll be there, Lionel will be there, and we're in talks with a potential guest. We'll unveil that potential guest at some point perhaps, but you can get tickets at thecyclingpodcast.com. Click through to events and it'll take you eventually to the page for the Harrogate event. It's going to be our biggest ever event. We're also doing a tour of British venues in November, and we're going to reveal details of those places as soon as we can, probably next week, I think. But stay tuned for that. That's all, I think, for tonight. Hang on, I almost forgot. I spoke to Egan Bernal of Team Ineos at the start this morning, the 22-year-old Colombian who some are saying is the favourite for the Tour. Well, I guess we'll have a reasonable idea maybe of that tomorrow night at La Planche des Belles Filles. Here's what he said at the start this morning. You've had a good start to the Tour. How are you feeling, and how did you feel the other day to gain 5 seconds on some of your rivals?
I'm feeling really good so far. I think that we did a really good preparation with my coach. We arrived to the Tour in a really good form, so I'm happy for that. And about the 5 seconds, I think that it's not too much time, to be honest, but it's better to gain 3 seconds that maybe lose them. But I think that normally you don't win the Tour for 5 seconds, but like I said, it's better to gain the seconds and not to lose.
I understand you were at the front of the bunch when Alaphilippe attacked on the climb. Did you think about going with him? Would you have been able to go with him?
Yeah, when he attacked, I was thinking maybe to take the bonus, but he attacked really strong. To be honest, I can't follow him. He was really strong, and yeah, I can't follow him.
What do you know about La Planche des Belles Filles, where we go tomorrow? Have you been up there?
No. I saw the videos of the last times that the Tour arrived there. Would be for sure a really hard stage. All the GC riders want to be in the front, want to gain some seconds, thinking in the future maybe the TT or everything. I think that will be the first contact with the high mountain, so for sure will be a really important day for us. A little bit more confident, I think. The last year, the first day I crashed and I lost time already, and I came the last year with another mentality, just to help the guys, and yeah, was really different. Now I'm happy to have the support of the team, and it's really different when you come with the guys, and when they are helping you, it's a little bit easier. But yeah, I'm really happy so far. I think that it's harder to not have them. When you have the support of your team, is something nice, and I am sharing the leadership with Thomas. So I think that if I do a good tour, it will be something nice, really nice. But if not, I'm just 22. It's my second tour, my second Grand Tour. So I just want to enjoy. I don't want to have pressure and maybe not enjoy the tour, thinking about the pressure, and it's the pressure that maybe the journalists want to put on me. It's not me. So yeah, I want to enjoy, and yeah, it's all.
The Thomazeau, supported by Hans Grohe today, was called the CEO, and it was an interview with Fran Miller, who's the CEO now at Team Ineos. And lots more to come from Kilometre Zero.
Certainly listen out to La Planche des Belles Filles tomorrow morning, Kilometre Zero episode, because it will whet your appetite.
Speaking of appetites, Lionel, I know yours is always whetted, and our table awaits us, I think, across there. And before we go, big thanks to some of you who've signed up as friends of the podcast at thecyclingpodcast.com, to Dylan Bexley, James Kelly, Ivar Nygaard, Adam Coomber and Peter Boninge. I hope that's the correct pronunciation.
Then many thanks to Martin Williamson, Jonathan Earl, Benjamin Barron, Mario Cohen, Robin Long.
And a big thank you to our friends Adrian Heaton, James Barnes, Daniel Power, Juan Munoz, Steve Orlick and Matthew Grant.
We better go and eat. That's all for now. Thank you, Lionel.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, François.
Thanks.